So can I ask our panel, does social media have a place in higher education? Okay, there are a number of issues I suppose that we could look at there. Obviously it's important in developing digital skills for the skills economy, but that's quite a utilitarian approach. But in what other ways is it shaping education, or can it shape education in a beneficial way that will actually confer value, real added value?
Who wants to all jump in first?
I've talked a fair bit now, but I might just start it off by saying that I've found in class that in many of my classes, it's a if you can't beat them, join them approach, which is why I originally got involved in social media research. I was worried about the use of social media in education. I was worried about the use of social media in my personal life. I'm not a big oversharer of information, but I'm of the opinion that we need to have the approach to students that they expect. If they're expecting digital skills and to learn digital skills and to have the employable skills, digital skills, we need to engage with them while they are here with us for 2, 3, 4 years using these digital skills. And social media is just one of a range of tools, that including like what Stephen presented on a few minutes ago. So I think that we don't really have a choice about doing social media in education. I think it's about how well we do it and how involved we get in social media in education. I'm not sure what some of the rest of the panel might think on that.
I think the how is the real important question here, Glenn, because even like you were given the live tweeting example there earlier, and there's initially thinking, great, good idea, works very well. Then I realised I got really annoyed at the cinema thing, people does tweet seats in the cinema, and I kind of got distracted from a large chunk of what you were saying, no offence, because basically I got really annoyed by that. I was having a conversation with Holly and a bunch of other people on Twitter during that, and it sort of did distract me from the main crux of what you're getting to. So like obviously it's good, but you kind of also have to pay attention to what's going on. And, it's like you were giving a very good talk, very interesting, but I was live tweeting this while I'm here, and I suddenly went off on a complete tangent. Like, so there's checks and balances to these things. Like obviously they're in certain amounts definitely very useful, but like as well, like just the overall benefit I think goes outside the classroom itself. Like, because obviously live tweeting in a lecture is one good example there, but it's really useful for collaboration. I know Stephen talked about Yammer a bit in terms of the business side of things, but even internally, the basic stuff you guys would use, your WhatsApps, your Facebooks, the likes, they're just quick ways to get hold of someone you're doing a collaborative project on, and it's basically a handier version in many respects than the old texting and phoning someone you're desperately trying to find them back when I was in college, about 15 years back. Because essentially you can get more rich data across. Like, so if you need someone to check out a video, check out a slide, it's much faster now than the email we'd have been using 15 years ago. So it's just easier essentially now to collaborate, and social media is a huge part of that.
Don't say 15 years ago. Emmett and I were in college at the same time, and I definitely wasn't in college 15 years ago.
I'm an old man, Holly.
You are an old man. Jesus, I'm not that old. I absolutely agree with Glenn in terms that we have to, use social media in education, because we use social media in ordinary everyday life, and education is part of our everyday lives. It's part of something that we do on a daily basis. If you don't learn something, you weren't listening. That's what my mum always said. And I think in terms of yes, absolutely, you do get distracted by, suddenly going off on tangents and people engaging with you, because that's what you find on social media. It's social, people engage with each other, and if you're doing social media right and are actually, sending out good things that people are interested in, people will find interesting ways to get in touch with you and to engage with you on a particular topic. So exactly as Emma was saying, yes, we were having a little, bitch fight about, sorry, cursing. Not really, I hope not. Sorry, Phil.
I'm under recording.
We'll bleep that out later. About people, the little blue lights in a cinema theatre, that would absolutely kill me. But similarly, as a lecturer, I wouldn't quite appreciate if everybody was off just chatting away on Facebook doing other things rather than focusing on a class that I was presenting. But in a similar way, I also teach social media, so in a way I sort of expect it in another instance. But it's about how we restrain ourselves as students to, be sending out good social tweets that are summarising good content, but not getting too distracted from what it is we're supposed to be doing in an engaging fashion.
Okay, so it's useful in subjects such as social media communications, obviously, and teaching digital skills. But is it useful in physics? I know, Nina, you teach IT, actually.
And one question I would bring it back to is the question I throw out. If you wanted to learn tennis for the first time, which approach would you take? would you read a book about how to do it, or would you take up a tennis ball and a tennis racket and go out and play? Now, the answer you come up with, you'll fall into two groups. Some people, when they want to learn something new, they actually prefer to read the material, and other people are more kinesthetic. But an interesting aspect is, I think the majority of people fall into the kinesthetic area. What I think social media does, and tweeting, is it gets people physically involved. They're interacting with a new sense, and gives them a sense of ownership. And I know myself as a lecturer, or somebody who's been at lectures, there's always the risk that after a certain amount of time your eyes glaze over and you're somewhere else. So what it does is it encourages people in a way that, say for example, when you break up the class and you ask questions and you try to wake everyone up and bring them involved again, by doing the tweeting, it's another way in which you can engage with your students and just bring their thoughts back to the lecture.
I found exactly the same in the live tweeting trials. I've actually found it goes a step further in that we have some shy students, particularly first years, of which there's many in the room here, who won't raise their hand and ask a question during class, but they will tweet. And because during the class, as presenter of the class, we don't have a tweet wall in every class. I won't get to monitor the tweets. Sometimes the students answer that question for each other. So the collaborative learning kicks in, where they actually explain something to each other without having to put up their hands. Now, I don't discourage students from raising their hands to ask a question, but simply, particularly first years, a lot of them are too shy to do so. So the online question asking through Twitter, or indeed through any social media, is a way that we can embrace those shy learners.
Okay, and
Yeah, I think Glenn has touched on a very important point there. If you're thinking that the focus of today is about first year student experience, and all the research would point to the fact that the quality of the student-lecture relationships, the student-student relationships, are so important to retaining students and keeping them in the system. And I think the social media aspect adds to that, and in fact all the research would point to social media actually encouraging students to engage in their education experience, and as a result they will stay in the system, they'll actually stay in the education system longer. Kuh and all those constructivist theoreticians will tell you that this is really so important to the student experience and the engagement. And the point you raised about some students being more reluctant to raise the hand, and that's so important, that when you're in a group, particularly in first year, sometimes you can be reluctant to actually engage in the experience, and confidence grows through the social media, and it really, really enhances the quality of those relationships between both lecturer and student and student and student.
okay, so it facilitates engagement, and also it can increase motivation if students are talking about projects, and it can increase the pace of learning. What about our students here? What do you think? Or do you have any views? Or do you tweet?
Well, this particular class of first year social media students, they would tweet because they're part of my class, and it's a requirement. It's not a requirement, they volunteer to do it for the incentive of some bonus marks.
Okay.
But they may have some thoughts on that.
We're tertiary marketing, we don't really tweet, to be perfectly honest, but Facebook we find is really key, particularly in group work. We have a lot of pages, private pages set up so that we can interact with each other and pass information around. And it is a great way to find out what you've missed, and if you're stuck on something, if you're working on something at home, we find it a great way to get help and assistance from the rest of the class.
And do you use Facebook groups for that, or Facebook pages?
We've both.
You've both?
Mix of both, yeah.
Which do you think are most effective in your opinion?
I think the groups are, particularly if you're working in a small group, there's less input and it's just whoever's in the group.
Any different functions as well? You got your notes and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, exactly. We do a lot of file sharing as well through it, so that we can put our work together and review each other's work. So
Yeah. Have you ever thought of setting up a separate private hashtag? Like, is there a private hashtag that we're not aware of today for Smart for Business? Because there's only about 10 people tweeting, but lots of people on phones. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, possibly getting 5, but...
No, your man's playing a game up there.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, most of the Dutch kids are hungover, clearly, they have a sleep like.
But is it possible that most of the tweeting actually is outside of class? That their live tweeting may not be terribly beneficial, but it's the educational process that arises after class, after the lecture. That's important.
I was interested in what you just said there about the groups, but it's private, and I think that there's a good reason for that. But also, just to combine it with maybe if everyone's live tweeting, not really paying enough attention to what's going on in the lecture, or not all at the same time, and things can be missed. So there's an interesting, the concept of a MOOC, a massively online course, the open online course.
That's right.
One of them used Stack Overflow, which is very popular with computing students. It's a site where you can post a question on a particular topic, and popular questions get voted up, and then popular answers can be accepted as the correct answer. So it's an interesting way of crowdsourcing what's the important questions here. Because as a lecturer, I might think students are having trouble with X, but really they're having trouble with Y, and I don't know it because I had trouble with X back in the day, but not with Y, and so on. So imagine that you were to combine the private Facebook group with a site where all the questions are public to everyone in the class. So you don't post any information that you wouldn't ask in class, but at least this way you're not putting your hand up. And everyone can vote on, yes, I have that question too. So it's not a vote and this is a good question, it's a vote on, I also have this question, or I already know that. And then the questions which rise to the top, Glenn goes, oh, I better answer that, because that's the one most people have pushed to the top, and then in preceding order. And the question at the bottom is one that maybe only one student had a question for. It doesn't mean it doesn't get answered, but the priority of answering is important. So you're combining the public and private.
I do exactly that in the live tweeting without using the technology you talk about. I do that on Twitter. I monitor offline, I suppose, after class. I monitor what the key topics are and the explanations. And if I see a student or a group of students didn't get the key concept or misunderstood the key concept, I'll make a note that the next time I see those students, that's what I start with. I recap that just to clarify. There was such issues regarding the CA and what's involved in the assignment. And there was a couple of people after class who were discussing it, and they actually got the wrong handle on something. So that was my cue to re-explain that at the start of the next class. And that's within the live tweeting thing, and that's how I got to monitor it. But there are other ways, like Stephen was saying, to do that as well.
Can I just rephrase, because you may not, for the recording. Your name, first of all?
Stefan Barre.
From
Ghent.
So we have Stefan from Ghent. And he makes the very valid point, which I'm sure we've all thought of, which is that tweeting is more of a distraction. That we talk about transferable skills and multitasking, but the reality is that can you really do two things at the same time? People were watching the tweets, viewing tweets, half listening, and that this multitasking can actually decrease productivity rather than increase it. And most cognitive psychologists, I think, would agree with you, and that there are a lot of myths out there about transferable skills. And your second point, if you just what was your second point again? If you just shyness, yes. And again, the idea that treating can facilitate young people who may be shy to engage. But what you're really trying to do, I mean, another generic skill is communication. And that's part of a person's maturity, and in actual fact, people can hide behind technology. Okay?
I might quickly just add to that. I'm conscious we're running short on time. The first thing, if I take them in reverse order, and I'll let the panel jump in as well, is that the shyness thing and business communication skills, I completely agree. But what we find here, and this idea at the seminar is about the first year transition, we find that for first years in the first few weeks, we are having big issues with retention and the literally being scared of a new dynamic coming from school to third level. So we found that not forcing them in the first few weeks to stand up in front of a group and present, or indeed to answer questions from to the group, was appropriate. Now by probably week 10, week 8, 9, 10 of the semester, in semester 1, so the first 10, like week 10 of their first year, they will be standing up in front of a group presenting, but we build it up slowly. So the idea of the live tweeting, and at most of the groups is first year, is that we don't force them very, very early on to do things they're not comfortable with. In business, in the Department of Management, they do intensive management and business communication skills in second year. But in year 1, we do develop slowly. Secondly, on your first question. The distractive aspect. I found over the last few years that students were on their smartphones anyway, in class, no matter what. They were probably on Facebook, they were probably on Twitter. You can only tell them so many times to put their phone away. There were issues many educators, I'm sure, have at all levels, primary, secondary, third level, of phones being confiscated. Well, primary and secondary level, we wouldn't really confiscate a third level student's phone, but
you haven't been to my lectures.
Maybe Stephen will. I haven't, but I thought, right, like I said before, what can I do with them? They're using their smartphones, they're using their devices anyway. How can I make that productive? And I haven't noticed a reduction in attention. In fact, this current year's of first years, of which there are many here, have the highest provisionally, the first CA results, first assessment results, are the highest assessment results in 8 years. I'm not sure what correlations there are there, but they are simply the highest results. I will have to probe later to see if the Twitter feeds help them with revision. So it's not proving to be distracting.
But sorry, but Glenn, I mean, in schools in Ireland in second level, they do ban, you know, of the
But just
Facebook and Twitter and so
the key
on,
theme
right?
is about the transition to third level, the
But-
first year series.
Okay, but we do have to look broader than that because technology is developing and the education sector is evolving with technology, but we do have to shape that process in a way that is beneficial to the learning process. So the critical thing is, are students really learning from the use of social media? Now, I think my own personal view is that there can be limited learning going on, that it could be more of a distraction in the classroom, except where you need up-to-date statistics or information. It's great for that, access to the internet. That is necessary in the classroom. Having that linked to a huge source of information is very enriching and fantastic and beneficial to us all. But if you think about it though, the use of social media in terms of that it can be used 24/9, the learning process can benefit from that. Stefan, did you have one other point that you wanted to make? No?
Yes, one more, but probably this is more anecdotal. I have students who discuss the questions of my exams from the previous years
Yes.
on Facebook, yeah, and I let them do it. But at a certain point, I got a printout of one of these discussions, and all the answers that they were discussing were wrong, and they distributed the wrong answers.
Exactly. So is it the blind leading?
Fabulous.
So Stefan raised the point of students discussing exam
Janice's
papers
groupthink.
and answering exam papers that all of the answers were incorrect. So there can be a lot of ignorance as opposed to knowledge out there, and people can be very misguided instead of actually acquiring wisdom. And that's where the quality of the information that is being obtained and the content is absolutely critical. And this is why, I suppose, and a question to think about, a lot of social media can be a waste of time. Whereas what the lecturer is trying to communicate is good, scientific, well thought out information, not the latest fad, craze, misconception.
But Phil, I found it complete opposite. All my grades have gone up. In the 2 classes I've tried social media with the live tweeting with, one of them here in front of us, they have the highest grades so far. I don't know if there's other factors to consider, part of the ongoing research for the rest of the year.
Okay.
But that's
Glenn, that maybe that it was the module was about learning. Isn't that correct?
one of them was, but the other one is the social media
And the
module.
social media module.
And
So we would
further research
expect
needed.
that obviously the use of social media within that context would be beneficial. But if you were teaching physics or a history of philosophy, would you have had the same?
There's a few other lecturers trialing it, so we'll know by the summer.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe we can ask our students how to handle it all
Yeah.
together in the classroom.
Okay, well, this is I think that we have been moving on. The best approach is to managing it. How can we manage this disruption in the classroom? Any views from the audience or
I don't think it's a disruption because, as I said, students were using their smartphones anyway. I came up with a process by which they could use it constructively. I'm not sure if the panel or the students have an opinion on that.
Yes, but can I just say why, and I'm paying devil's advocate here, do a lot of lecturers tell students when they come in, put off your smartphones. Okay?
I think
precisely
there's
because it's an interference.
I think there's a fear, sometimes a fear factor that, for example, students bringing in, there are many factors here at play. I think we're worried, as Stefan mentioned, about the fact that they're not listening to what we're supposed to be lecturing them on, number one. But the reality is that it's a tide out there, outside the walls of our institution that they're used to. They're in this habit of coming in and having these many distractions, doing many things at the one time. Maybe not well, but the reality is that if any of us go to a conference or to a meeting, we're sitting there with our phones checking emails. We might not be letting people know, but we are.
And
People are multitasking, so it's a wave, it's a tide, and we should decide how best to deal with it rather than resist.
I'm like,
Okay,
Because
so-
it's there,
so-
it's there, it's a fact, it's a reality of their lives.
Yeah.
So we either go with it and integrate it as best we can, and the answers for that are for us as educators to find by consulting with
The
you
best
to see
approach.
what's best to do.
So we'll come back to that in a second, and I'll come to Emmett one for a moment. But are we saying then that we just allow people to become very unstructured, doing bits and pieces of several things at the same time, and not doing anything well or properly?
well, isn't
And
that kind
as you
of...
said earlier, concentration. I mean, science requires concentration.
Yeah, well, like part of the whole college thing is learning how to actually learn yourself. It's not as structured at second level anyway. But also, even look at sort of the room here today. You know, it's like a whole lot of you are bored, and that's fine. But the difference is, 15 years ago, if you were bored, it'd be really noisy in here. You'd be all whispering to each other. Thankfully, you're texting and tweeting each other, so it's great. Like, you know, I see at least one really hungover guy there with slick hair over there. That's grand, like, you know, because he's not actually bothering anyone. He's just tweeting under the desk. But like, that's the difference between now and 15 years ago. It's actually easier for students who are paying attention. But again, like, going back to the original point I was making there, though, is the college learning environment. Like, part of it is a case of you've got to build your own structure. It's about it not being handed to you. So if you might go, well, it's disruptive, it's getting in the way. This case of no, it's like you're working out how you're getting along, because like the real world's kind of messy anyway. So if you're not sorting out yourself, it's not going to get handed to you. Trust me.
Okay.
Can I
Margaret
ask a
from
question
this.
of the audience though, just really briefly? How many of you have ever been distracted by the PowerPoint that's happening behind your lecture? Show of hands. Yeah.
A whole lot of liars.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I probably weren't reading it the rest of the
However, have you ever been distracted by the fact that you were listening to something really intently and trying to take down as much of the notes, but you got so involved in the note taking that you forgot what the lecturer was saying as well? So again, it's exactly the same thing. You're all putting your hands, but it's exactly the same thing. You were as distracted by the lecturer as you are the lecturer's notes, what the lecturer is saying, what you should be talking about. And also, however, have you ever like live tweeted while watching TV? Do you ever watch Twitter and TV at the same time? Have two screens, the second screen as they're calling it now, and you're having conversations with people all over the world about the same show. The best thing ever coming up in May will be Eurovision. Honest to God, have Eurovision on Twitter and have wonderful tweet conversations with people while being distracted. But being distracted, but it's also about learning collaboratively as well as a group.
Okay. By the way, context might be important there. If you're in work, it's more important that you're concentrated. If you're just watching TV, obviously it doesn't matter, Mags from the Centre for Learning and Teaching.
Hi, I'm going to tweak this, but I'd say it instead. We're talking about lectures too much, and we're talking about Twitter too much. There's much more social media than Twitter.
I agree.
There's much more to learning about.
But we're looking at it in the classroom.
In the classroom, correct. But I do think we do also need to talk about what happens outside the classroom, because if we talk about learning, what percentage of learning happens in the classroom and what percentage of learning happens outside the classroom. And the key role of the educator is to structure the learning experience. So Twitter is part of that structure, and social media generally.
Yeah. Like if you were to leave the classroom, you'd probably lose about 90% of what the person just said within about 2 days. So in order for you to retain as much of that knowledge as possible, you have all heard of the forgetting curve. As soon as you leave the classroom, your knowledge of that just goes down. The more you experience and practice what it is that you learn, or be able to revise what it is that you've learned, the better. And if you're doing things like making YouTube videos about something that you, as part of your project, or you're using Google Plus as a way of experiencing with different hangouts and different groups, or if you're using Yammer or Stack Overflow or GitHub in order to source code and collaboratively work together, there are so many different social networks out there for you to find your own niche and really work within that niche. And I think it's incredibly important that you don't just do stuff in the classroom, because you forget all of it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it's about.
Okay, can I have a question?
Can I just say, as a student, like every one of our classes when we go into, first thing we're taught is to put our phones away. Every single class for the last 3 years. And I just kind of want to back up what's, part of the lecturer's job, in my opinion, and what we keep getting told by lecturers is to just facilitate our learning. So, I don't see what difference it makes to a lecturer if somebody is choosing not to focus on what they're saying and it's that person's responsibility. Ultimately, it's their degree, it's their level of understanding. So it's their, we're being told on one hand it's our responsibility, our learning is our responsibility, but then on the other it's going back to a primary school or secondary school kind of phase where you're told, you can't make the decision about whether you're going to focus in this class or not. and turn off your social media.
Well, it's not whether you're focusing, it's just what device are you using in order to focus. I mean, I could be taking notes on my phone because I forgot my iPad that day, or my laptop's lost its charge. Well, the only thing I have left with me is either a pen, which I'm terrible at handwriting, or my phone. So I'll just quickly take notes on my phone. Whether that's it's just the different devices you use to focus. And your own self-directed learning, which is incredibly important at third and fourth level. How you choose to go off on a specific tangent because you're really interested in this particular topic. The next couple of slides, you can review the slides back on Moodle or Blackboard afterwards, and it's absolutely fine.
Okay, so our third theme there, which you've been talking about, is which social media are best for first-year students, Twitter or Facebook. Have you any further views on that? There
Definitely YouTube.
Problems with both, and
YouTube, like not within the class, but actually within it. It's great. You can actually show clips of YouTube videos to explain concepts, and particularly when somebody is totally new to a concept, there is a big value on going online and looking up the likes of Wikipedia and looking at YouTube videos. Ultimately, it won't be the last place you read, but if you sit down and read your course book straight away, it might be too much to take in. So I think there's a huge value in it. And in terms of going back to the self-directed learning, this is a key skill that you need within the workplace. The way in which, for example, management and leadership is going these days, it's almost an inverse. There's the concept of the servant leader. And the idea is that more and more we are relying on people, the individual experts in the team, to have that knowledge. So, for example, in IT, the graduate coming in with a few years' experience, they will know more about an area than the person managing them, the project manager. There was a time that wasn't the case. There was the time as the project manager you would know everything. So you are relying on people to have the skill of self-directed learning and also the ownership. And I think that that's what can come across when you change the relationship dynamic in the class, when you empower the students.
Okay. We'll move on then. How can institute marketers embrace social media to attract school leavers or mature applicants? So we're looking at the interface, I suppose, between third level and second level. And social media, can can it, maybe it's not, be a useful tool for those students who are thinking of entering third level?
Yeah, I think it's already there and happening. I know, having had my own daughter through the process of choosing which university to go to, she used Facebook quite a lot to find out what's happening, what points are happening, what's the requirement, what's the experience, the student experience like. So it's already happening. So if we're not tapping into that and utilising that as an educational provider, we're really losing out. I talked to a group of Brazilian university visitors this morning, and we asked them what's the criteria that those people would choose where to go in the world when they're travelling, international study. And Facebook kept cropping up again, that they will actually talk to people about where you've been in the world, what's been happening. And we're spending a lot of money on marketing teams and so on, saying great things about come here because of this. They'll check it out on Facebook first, or they'll verify if that's a fact or what's happening, and they'll get the mean, the average. It's like you go on TripAdvisor and you find out what's the best. They do the same equivalent for an educational institution.
So it can improve choices and therefore support retention.
It provides information. I mean, it is the TripAdvisor of the industry.
Yeah. But can it be manipulated though?
It's honest reviews. Well, it's reviews, whether they're honest or not, just like TripAdvisor or any other site. They're reviews, and they're peer reviews that are listening to the words of their compatriots who perhaps joined the college the year before, or the year before that, or perhaps have since graduated. But just like TripAdvisor, when you look at somebody who's staying in a hotel, it's up to us whether we trust them. But whether we trust it or not, whether we do it or not, this conversation is happening online. These peer reviews are happening, and they're certainly influencing the choice of which college to go to.
But would you say that one of the problems, though, with social media is the whole issue of censorship, for example? I mean, if you think, globally, and manipulation of information.
Well, censorship, I think we saw a really good example there 2 weeks ago. There's only so much you can do, and Turkey banned Twitter and YouTube. One of my side gigs, I run Europe's biggest English language basketball site. Do check it out. And all the Turkish guys who followed me had no trouble talking to me throughout that, because it turned out that it's really, really easy to circumvent a lot of these bans. Like, these weren't coders, these weren't guys with Stephen's level training, even my level training. These are ordinary people who are, who basically just got up and were really, really annoyed. They couldn't tweet, they couldn't go on YouTube. So the first thing they did was Google ways to get around it. So there's a limit to how much censorship you can do. Obviously, when you have mass state level stuff like in some countries, But like, you know, if you're in a sort of even a reasonable level of democracy, like, you know, essentially it's going to have very limited impact. As we saw, like the real Turkish upsurge, because the most tweets sent in a single day was the day Turkey banned Twitter, because pretty much the entire country said, no, you don't.
Okay. Stefan?
Just in addition to what was already said, we are using in my college YouTube to attract foreign students, mainly Erasmus students. So, for example, I cut up my course of international marketing in the basic concepts, just basic concepts in 5-minute movies, not longer than 5 minutes, because the attention span of people watching a YouTube video is very short. So students from abroad are already directed to that website. At this point, only the students who are already interested, and they can see how things are explained, how what the content of the course will be, and moreover, students who are already in the course can go back to YouTube and see how I explain certain concepts again, over and over again, until they actually understand what's happening.
Sorry, can I
Thank you, Stefan. You moved on to our next point, which was the experience in the home country of our visiting international lecturers. So in your country, it has been very positive.
In my school,
In your
not in
school.
my country,
In your
we are
school.
the first to do this.
Okay.
So Phil, can I
Okay.
just make a comment on that? That's a positive. I think that's good. YouTube is good at that. But one thing that would be negative is you cannot control the videos you might like on the sidebar of YouTube. Well, maybe you can now, but when I last used YouTube, you couldn't. And when I was at the back before I made this presentation, and I don't like mentioning this, but a lot of the videos when I was on the YouTube site, I think would be embarrassing if I showed them on the screen, because there were students on campus filming each other doing funny things. And sometimes there was alcohol involved, which is a shock. You know, I mean, Irish students generally don't drink. But if I had shown that up on the screen, it'd be embarrassing, especially because I'm being filmed and so on. So my way of hiding that was having it in an app, and it only shows the videos that I want to show. Now, imagine you're trying to get an Erasmus
You don't
student in
control.
Ireland to come to your college,
That's
You
good.
don't
and
control.
they see your excellent lecture, I'm sure they'd say, yes, I'd like that. And then they see on the side, watch us do something, embarrassing. It may or may not make them want to come to your college, and you can't control that.
No, I don't want to control that. I'm not Big Brother. Big Brother is already here. It's NSA, it's whatever it's called in the UK.
Well, I'm not talking about Big Brother, I'm talking about marketing.
I am Big Brother. Control beyond the imagination of what George Orwell wrote in 1984, not 1948,
But
in his book 1984.
that's not what I'm getting
I do not want to control what people see. The YouTube videos
You
about
do
the
when it's
English,
marketing.
the Irish students who are lovers of are already there.
Guys, sorry.
Okay. So just any other visitors here?
I was looking here
any-
for the visitors, because we've heard from literally 2 people under 30 today, no offense. I'd actually like to ask
Yes.
our visiting students, because we've been about Twitter and Facebook a lot, but I'm pretty certain that isn't necessarily the main thing you guys are using. So just from our Dutch folks here, who would use Snapchat on a daily basis? Come on,
Instagram and all
yeah,
that.
or
Yeah,
Instagram, or
Instagram,
anything.
all those.
Like what else would you guys use? Like,
Yeah.
what's particularly
What's-
popular at the
what's
moment? with you?
popular?
What are the popular apps at the moment, basically, for you guys?
Because we're not cool, we don't know.
Like, I'm old. Tell me.
Keep us in the picture.
We're not going to use them.
How many people
What, sorry?
from Holland are on Twitter? Okay, what you are posting on Twitter, the same content as on Facebook, or?
What do you do? What else do you use apart from those? Like,
Well, probably the most interesting thing that we use at our university, and especially in our course, which is commercial economics from my part. And we actually have our own platform created by students, for students,
Cool.
without teachers and without supervising it. So it's all very
yeah, that's
objective
excellent.
from a student point of view. So
And you control over, right?
summaries get posted.
Yeah.
Obviously, also questions which were asked during tests for people who are going after them. with the answers they think, and people actually
Back to
get
Stefan.
involved. And you just get, at some point, you just get people correcting other people, saying, no, that answer's not correct, because in that book, page 320.
That's also what you share with each other? It's
Yeah,
a wrong
we-
question of a wrong answer?
They don't think it's the wrong answer.
No,
They think it's the
no.
right one at the time, but they're correcting each other.
So it starts out with someone saying, well, I think it was this answer, and then because there at this point there are probably 500 students being involved. In the end, it's just the fact of the big numbers, and someone will show up with actual accurate literature
Right.
and a good answer.
Yeah, but that's also a kind of learning.
It is, absolutely, absolutely. It's what Mags talked about, the extension beyond.
The whole social media thing, and just, I think new learning in general is just that it's all on demand.
Yeah.
So for instance, when the Microsoft drop and drag thing was being introduced, I was kind of enthusiastic, and it was just that I don't have a laptop here, because otherwise I would be already involved in trying to make it, right here on the spot while he was explaining it.
And I'd like
himself.
students to follow me when I'm lecturing like that.
No, yeah, but that's just a new way of learning, and I don't want
in
to.
writing, yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to consume time with. I don't want to consume time from other people asking a question when I can look it up on some kind of other
That's
platform,
true.
just by
That's
myself within a minute, and not
Mhm.
asking and then waiting for a response. So no, this takes too long.
All right.
But do you ever contribute to Wikipedia? Has anybody ever contributed to Wikipedia in this room? 2
Anyone under
people?
30?
Three
There,
people? Any women never contributed to Wikipedia?
We learned then that there must be a little bit angry about
Yes.
Wikipedia
Yeah.
because everybody can say something.
Yes.
about,
So the reliability-
But it's all learning. We all learn from each other at the same time. Somebody will be more correct than
Yeah.
another person. But there are very few. First of all, about Wikipedia, there are very few women who ever contribute to Wikipedia. I think of all the millions of Wikipedia pages that are out there, less than 10% of them are contributed to by women. So those us girls in the room, can we go on Wikipedia and start correcting somebody's mistakes? But as we learn, as we really absorb stuff in the classroom, as we develop new research, if we publish something that we think actually now affects facts that are outside online, that people go to Wikipedia to find out the real answer, and if we know the real answer and we can explain it better, go onto Wikipedia and edit that page. If you're completely wrong, then somebody will fix it again after you. The Wikipedia police will come in after you. But it's a collaborative project. It is the biggest source of information online is on Wikipedia, and it's one of the biggest websites in the world. Absolutely get involved. As students, you can become educators and really get involved in that way.
Okay.
Perhaps one last point.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're running short of time. I think personally that we don't have an option, as I said at the start, about engaging with students through social media, but it is how we do it and dealing with the pitfalls, the negative side, of which there are many, but also looking at the potentials, the positives of social media in the classroom, outside the classroom, after the classroom, in education, but particularly as the focus of this seminar was on helping to make the transition to education. And with that in mind, I think social media has a massive potential.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think I would agree with that. Are there, where to from here? Any final closing
Onwards,
thoughts?
upwards, something going to get
Well,
worse.
I think it's, no, it's not going to get worse. I think it's a fantastic challenge. It is a challenge.
It is.
It's because it's changing so fast. But I do think that I suppose our biggest concerns as educators is that we want to create, if you forgive the pun, we want creative thinkers. And people mentioned some during some of the talks that we're consuming information quite a lot. There's a lot of consumption of content. And my concern from a humanities background, I suppose, is that we want more creative thinkers and we want people being critical thinkers and so on. And I suppose a worry that I would have is, so it's really about the challenge of how we can actually marry the two and use the technology to create those creative thinkers and critical thinkers that we want, but at the same time utilise the information and the media that is there at our fingertips.
I just want to respond to
So
the wall.
technology is really, it is a tool, and we know that sites can be managed, and there is a lot of valuable learning, whether it's in physics or mathematics or biology, that can be accessed online. And it's a matter of who you link into. You choose whatever the information or topics that you wish, but it is possible to manage that.
I just want to say, if Lex Bazzali is too nervous to ask a question today, feel free to tweet any of us afterwards as well. I just see you a bit nervous about asking questions earlier. Okay.
Okay.
Who is Lex Baselli?
Holly, any point from a recruiter's point of view?
From a recruitment, my day job is a recruitment marketer. I'm not a recruiter. I'll just put that out there. Stephen mentioned earlier on that having that some of your public photographs, videos, content that you post online that you would rather an organisation would not see, because recruiters might see it in a negative light. He is correct in some guise of that. Recruiters will look at your Facebook profile if they can't find anything else about you. So my advice for you from a recruitment perspective will be to give them good information. So start up a LinkedIn profile, get your LinkedIn profile all singing, all dancing, so that they don't have to go continue seeking information after that. You should be aware of your privacy settings on Facebook, but that's just for common sense. Don't post anything up on Facebook that is related to illegal things.
You wouldn't want your granny reading.
Yeah.
Well, just because you can be like, nothing on Facebook is really ever private.
True.
Even the posts that you don't actually publish to Facebook are still recorded by Facebook. So just be conscious of social media. But nobody's ever going to punish you for being in a photograph with a can of beer. We're all human beings. We all live lives.
We just on that in America, a female teacher in middle school parents reported her. She was on holidays in Ireland. She went to the Guinness breweries. There was a picture of her not drinking but holding 2 pints of Guinness. Parent reported to school board. She was fired. So although no one in Ireland would fire you for holding the can of beer, some places can be a bit strict about it.
Would you want to work for them?
That's a big question.
Hard to get on their job.
Yeah, but if you say you're sick and then through social media
Well,
they
that's
find
different.
out,
That's different. That's a very different situation.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.